Hey, I'm Delise.
And I'm Jenny.
We know that parenting comes in seasons, and even the smallest wins deserve a happy dance.
Join us as we chat with moms in every stage of the parenting journey, fixing our eyes on Jesus each step of the way.
This is Blessings and Motherhood, because we believe that you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Blessings and Motherhood. Today we have Sam Sorbo on the show, and we're really excited to actually talk to her about her new movie release.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I've been on the edge of my seat waiting for this movie to come out, and it was a thrill to get to chat with her about it.
She also talks a lot about forgiveness and just the way that our culture is swinging and how to cause it to swing back in a healthier direction. So you're not going to want to miss what she has to say.
Yeah.
Well, hi, Sam. Welcome to Blessings in Motherhood.
Well, thank you for having me.
For those who might not be familiar with you, can you just give us a brief intro?
Well, first and foremost, I am a mom of three almost grown children. So 17, 19, and 22 are my wee little children.
Aww.
They're all bigger than
Love
me
it.
now. And I'm a film producer. I'm also an actress. I'm also an author. I style myself as an education freedom advocate. I think that children don't belong in school. I don't think that it's a proper thing to institutionalize a child.
Yeah.
I'm very opinionated.
Love it.
So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Now, Sam, I've been following you a little bit on Instagram and seeing some of your posts. Now, you just recently took your, I want to say, youngest daughter to Paris. Is that correct? For her kind of final senior year. Is that correct?
Yeah, she's my youngest and my only, and I'm actually in Paris right now.
Wow. Well,
Yay!
how is that going? What have been like the highlights of you guys' educational trip to Paris?
Yeah, it's been just an amazing trip. We've been here for what we will have been here for the entire month of September, and we are doing either a museum or a castle every single day, every single day. And she is an artist, and so her joy is to sit in a museum and draw what she sees. And it's funny because we spent the whole day at the Louvre yesterday, and she did two drawings, and she said to me, and she took 1,000 photos, and she said to me, "Mom, I just realized I drew two drawings and I forgot to photograph the things that I drew."
Aw.
So you're gonna have to go
We
back,
might have to
right?
go back, exactly.
Yeah, and now did you pick Paris because of her love of art? Is that something she's interested in doing, so that's why you chose that?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, she wanted to learn some French. I've lived here before, so I was very comfortable coming back here. There are a couple different reasons and I still have friends here and stuff like that. So there's several reasons for choosing Paris, but I think the number one reason is because it's Paris.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to go?
Sort of a
Yeah.
no-brainer.
Yeah, and you homeschool, and like you were saying earlier, you have the educational freedom to take your daughter to Paris because she's interested in art. Like, how amazing is
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, some people call it world schooling uh, at this stage. So yeah.
Is that something that you've done with your older two boys, or is this the first time that you've done the world schooling?
This is my first time world schooling. Now that is to say, when they were younger, when all the kids were younger, we did do a historical tour through DC and the Virginia area
Nice.
of all the history there. So, and then beyond that, we traveled a lot because of my husband's work, and we took a bit of a, how do I say it? We basically made a vow to never be apart
Mhm.
for more than 2 weeks, my husband and I.
I love that.
Yeah, it's I think because he's in Hollywood and so
Mhm.
film shoots can go for 2 months, we just set that
Right.
as our guide, and we didn't break that rule until, my gosh, last year or something like that. And now, of course, we've broken it because he was supposed to come over, but he can't because he's promoting the movie and it's way too much, and so he couldn't get on a plane. But in any case, so the kids have always traveled. And so, in that sense, whenever we traveled, I would always find sort of the historical aspects or the scientific aspects, or whatever
Mhm.
whatever I could get from the area. So I guess this isn't really anything new, but maybe a little bit.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I was raised very similarly. We did a lot of travel when I was a kid, and I was homeschooled. And so it just kind of melds itself together very naturally. I think it would be harder to not capitalize on whatever it is that's going on and what you can learn from it. So I love that you guys are doing that. Talk to us a little bit, and you might have to reach back because your babies are no longer babies, about how you structured your time with your children. Because we know you're an actress and we know that you've always had a lot on your plate. So for moms who are also trying to juggle a lot of balls, maybe run their own business and have aspirations and dreams, what does that look like when you really want to devote your time to your children and you steward that well?
Mm.
So I love this question because I did it wrong.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so, if I could go back and change it, and this is really the crux of the question, right? Was my advice to young mothers who are trying to balance things and make it work while they are full on educating their kids and maybe starting, running a small business from home or working from home or what have you. And what I've learned, and this is why my thoughts on education have shifted fairly drastically,
Mm.
is that education is not nearly as hard as the educators have made it. And so while we are trying to sort of march to the tune of their drummer, we are doing ourselves a disservice. They say we have to do math at 10 o'clock and social studies at 11 o'clock, and you have to know all of the presidents in order by second grade, and be able to say them all by name with their wives or whatever.
Hmm.
And that is what takes the fun out of learning. All those rules and regulations. And if you cut children free, and I'll tell you this because my daughter taught me this. So my sons, I really homeschooled them. I schooled them. I gave them the literature. We read. We did the book reports. We did the X, Y, and Z. We dotted every I, crossed every T. And I was successful. They are intelligent, well-educated young men. My daughter is an artist.
Yeah.
And when she was very young, when she was like 5, I said to her, if you like to draw, you should draw every day. 15 minutes. Just set aside the time and do that every day, thinking that she would either grow out of it or or she would really love it. Well, she began drawing 3 hours every day because that's also her personality. She loved doing it and she became very, very gifted. And which is not to say that she wasn't gifted before, but she's quite talented now because she's refined her techniques. So when she was about 11, I have to say I kind of hit my knees because my oldest wanted to be an actor. Well, I've got that covered. I know how to teach that because I know how to do that. My second one really loved to engineer. I engineering, and I studied engineering, so I can teach that, right? But my third's an artist, and I don't know the first diddlywink about art because I've never done it, and I'm not even interested, and etc. Right? And somebody said to me, maybe she needs an anatomy class. And I was like, hallelujah, I will find her an anatomy teacher. I will delegate my responsibility as the teacher, and that will get her educated because that's how education works, right? Education works where there's a teacher and a student, and the teacher teaches the student, and that's how education works. No, that is the wrong way to do education, even though that's what's practiced in our schools. So I ran up to Tavy's room when she was like 11 and I said, "What if we got you an anatomy class?" And she looked at me with this like, "Oh, well, bless your heart," kind of a only an 11-year-old, right? And she showed me her sketchbook. And she was already sketching the interior workings of the human knee in various positions because YouTube.
There you
Wow.
go.
And the point is that if you set a child free to teach themselves, they are so motivated to learn.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Get out of the way.
Mm.
Hmm.
That's the point. So, do they need guidelines? Yes, because you want them to know history. You want them to know things. You want them to have read Shakespeare. So, you need to instill in them the respect and the admiration for Shakespeare and what Shakespeare accomplished, because Shakespeare is the most quoted author, perhaps aside from the Bible, who he quotes quite deliberately and frequently, right? And so you want them to have all of that, but at the same time you don't want to make it drudgery because they will forget it all. And all you have to do is ask yourself, what do you remember from school? And do you actually do for a living what you learn to do in school? And most people, the answer is no.
Yeah. Oh, I would agree with that. Well, Sam, I'm very curious to hear about this upcoming movie you have, Miracle in East Texas. You mentioned a little earlier that your husband was out promoting it. So please, please tell me more.
Yeah, so Miracle in East Texas is actually based on a true story. It's inspired by the true story of the East Texas oil strike.
Okay.
It is a family friendly comedy. We are family oriented people, and we see in the culture today a disdain for children, a destruction of youth and the child that we don't support. This movie is, it's got the PTC Parents Television Council seal of approval. It's got Movie Guide seal of approval and recommendation. And so it is a family friendly comedy. And I'm very proud of it, not just for that reason. I'm also proud of it because it tells the story of the East Texas oil strike, which was and still is, I think, the biggest oil strike in the history of the United States. It happened in 1930 during the Depression. We do tell it as a comedy, but that's because it is hilarious how the whole thing went about, even in the true story of it. And so I want to share with you why it's important, because I didn't learn the importance of this until I started promoting the movie. And I was talking with
Hmm.
a guy from East Texas, and I told him a little bit about the story. And he said, "Well, the only thing I know about those two gentlemen who had that oil rig, that they had such a rickety old rig, and it broke down, and they didn't even have the money to fix it. So they just drilled right there." And I was like, "Well, that scene's in my movie." And he said,
Yeah.
"Well, that's the truth. I mean, that's part of the story, but do you know the rest of the story?" And I said, "Do tell me." A decade after that oil strike, which was enormous, like I said, it was the biggest one in the history of the United States, we entered the war, World War II. And within a month of our entering World War II, the German U-boats had shot through, torpedoed 72 of 73 tankers of oil, East Texas oil, headed to the fighting troops in Europe.
Wow.
So we built a pipeline across the United States. And Winston Churchill has said that the Allies floated to victory on a sea of East Texas oil. In other words, without that oil, we
Yeah.
might not have won the war because our tanks didn't run out of gas before the German tanks did.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So to me, that's like just icing on the cake. I actually put together a curriculum for families, a homeschool curriculum that goes along with the movie. It's brief. It's not any great grand strokes. The movie's a comedy, so but because it is based on a true story, there's a lot of truth in it. So the curriculum goes a little bit into economics, a little bit into the historical aspect of oil, a little bit into the importance of oil in our economy today, and a little bit into the idea of forgiveness, because forgiveness is, well, it's predominantly a Christian value. It is, above all, an American value, or maybe not above all, but it's certainly an American value. At least it's a traditional American value. And unfortunately, we're losing it in today's society. We have a society of cancel culture, and that is really the practice of unforgiveness. And so, with this movie, we are basically trying to breathe a little bit of traditional values back into the culture. Um, and with the curriculum, I'm hoping to encourage families to, in a sense, try on the idea of home educating their children. You, as a parent, have a great deal to offer your children, and it bothers me that the school makes you feel irrelevant to the education of your child and makes your child think that you're irrelevant to their education. And that is the breakdown of the family. And so I don't support it anymore.
Well, good for you. We don't support it anymore either. And with that said, so you kind of alluded to these, but I wonder if without a spoiler, you could dive a little deeper into a few of these things. Number one, we'd love to know what needs, you kind of said this already, but what needs do you feel like this movie is meeting for families? Are there some deeper needs that you've already seen, maybe for people who have already seen the film and given you feedback that it's met? And then also, along with that, what specific discussions do you know are going to come out of it? Again, no spoilers, but is there one discussion that you really anticipate coming out of this film?
Yeah. Yeah, most importantly, the discussion of forgiveness. And that was a really important part of the curriculum. I mean, I wrote the curriculum, so I got to decide what went in it. And the discussion of forgiveness is a big one for me. I've been writing about forgiveness for decades. It's sort of a passion of mine. Before I became a Christian, I was writing about forgiveness and the idea that we all need it, and the idea that we withhold it from people as punishment because it is so necessary. And so, in the curriculum, what I've done with the curriculum is it is a discussion guide. The idea is that the way that wealth is created is I have a glass of water and you have a dollar, and the glass of water is worth more to you than your dollar. And I have several glasses of water, so I don't need them. So I give you the glass of water, you give me a dollar, and I'm a dollar wealthier, and we're both happy, right?
Right.
Right.
But the question is, where is the wealth generated? Who walks away wealthier? And the answer is we both do. The creation of wealth is a spiritual equation that happens with the exchange. And it's the same thing with knowledge. When we exchange knowledge, when there's that equation, that give and take, wealth of knowledge is created. And that's what you can have with your child.
Mhm.
It's not more complicated than that. It's a spiritual equation. To me, it's when I figured this out, it was like it blew my mind because, of course, that's the way God works. It's super simple, but it's hard to grasp because we are so material and we're so trained to be material. If you went to school, you were trained to be materialist. You were trained to value yourself as a number, as how much money you could make. College prep and career readiness, that teaches you that your value is tied intrinsically to how much money you can earn. Voila, right? So with the curriculum, I want to inspire parents to have these conversations and to understand they have so much to offer their children, and there's value in that. And there's so little value in memorizing dates and places and names for a history exam that you're going to forget the minute you walk out of the room. The two aren't anywhere close to equivalent. One of the reasons that we homeschool, and it's hard for people to understand this. I mean, I was at a dinner the other night, and the ladies there, they sent their kids to the finest schools, and they cannot understand this concept of relationship with the child. They
Mhm.
think they have a relationship with their children. Their children live overseas, they never see them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so it because you've never experienced, how are you going to know what I'm talking about if you've really never experienced it? And I'm not disdainful of them. I'm not. I feel sad for them because they don't know what they're missing. Right? Parents don't understand what they sacrifice when they surrender their children to the schools, but they sacrifice so much beyond what they can imagine. And when I realized that, I became kind of angry at the system for trying to convince me that I wasn't good enough.
Or tell
Yeah.
you that you're the one sacrificing by keeping your children
Right.
home. I feel like that's
Right.
a lot of moms try to tell me is, "You're sacrificing socialization and all these things," and I'm like,
No.
"No, no, no, there's so much more that I can
Yeah.
gain from homeschooling."
And you're sacrificing your free time and you're sacrificing yourself. And I'm like, no, you have no idea. I'm the lazy one that doesn't have to get up early to take my kids to school and answer to some teacher who lords it over me somehow, whatever, right? There's so much more there. I know that parents, particularly moms who homeschool, struggle a lot with feeling inadequate. You know,
I
my
can raise
name
my
is
hand on
Sam
that one.
Sorbo, and I'm an inadequate homeschooler. You know, hello, Sam Sorbo, right? So, I was inadequate for decades, a decade at least, right? And you should feel that way because you were trained to feel that way. So Embrace it, accept it, move on, right? Disregard it. Say, "Yes, I'm going to be fully inadequate today and have a lot of fun with my kids. You will be succeeding." And I also say this to parents, if homeschooling is hard, you're doing it wrong. Shouldn't be hard. Make it easier. It shouldn't be hard. If you're in a power struggle with your child, don't give in. Just hold out. Consequences with a smile. They're the ones that are bringing the consequences on them. "Oh, I'm so sorry you can't watch TV." Yeah, no. Well, that was the deal. You were supposed to get this work done and then you didn't. So now you have to get the work done and there's no movie or whatever, right? There's no game, there's no this, that. The consequences take care of the power struggle and you just remain relaxed.
Mm,
Yeah.
But we aren't taught this, and you know why? Because generationally, we've lost our generational knowledge. Because we've been separated from our parents, they were separated from their parents, and pretty soon grandma's perfect recipe for the grip, for the flu, is gone with the wind because nobody's practicing that anymore.
Yeah.
mhm. I love the freedom in what you're saying. There's so much freedom in that. Like, yes, own your child's education. At the same time, it's not up to you how they turn out. Do your very best and open up your hands. You're going to feel inadequate sometimes. They taught you to feel that way, but God is in control
Yeah.
of the
Yes.
future, right? There's freedom there. There's freedom in what you just said about make it easier. It doesn't have to be this power struggle like that. Open up your hands. You're just trying to be faithful. You can't control these outcomes beyond what is within your control. It's beautiful. And as a person who was homeschooled through high school, and just hearing you talk about they're missing out, that was a huge incentive for me to want to figure out how I could stay home with my child because I saw what my mom got and I didn't want to miss out. I'm like, well, I loved it. I loved being a part of it as a child. Why would I want to skip part two? It only gets better from
Yes.
here. So I do just 100% applaud you, and I love what you're saying.
Yeah, I do too. And I have a couple questions about your lesson plans. Now, what age group is it geared toward, or is it just geared toward all ages? And then do you like, if I want to go get this resource, do I want to do it as I'm watching the movie or just
Mm,
talk about it after the movie, after we watch it?
Oh yeah, so the resource for the movie, the homeschool guide, discussion guide for the movie, that is to be done after the movie. You can do it.
Okay.
You can go out to dinner afterwards and do it. You can do it the next morning at the kitchen table. Like it's fun. It's pretty much all ages. Although 5-year-old's not going to be that interested in going through stuff like that, right? Um, and then it's fairly easily tailored. If you get stuck on a question, if it's just not that interesting, move on. It's no one's going to grade you on this, right? So don't worry about it. It's prompting to have that discussion. The other part that I was going to fill in is you are given your children to teach you.
mm,
So your job is also to learn. And
Yeah.
don't forget that part of it, right? So at the same time that you're trying to sort of impose your will on your child, and you're going to learn that that's not going to go very well, uh, right? There's a learning that happens. And for instance, in the discussion guide, there's some open-ended questions. Wait to hear what your child comes up with. How do you think people responded to the stock market crash of 1929? Well, what does that mean? Well, the stock market crashed. So a lot of people had bought a lot of stock and they had all their money in the stock market. And then all of a sudden it wasn't worth anything. What do you think happened then? And so you can have that conversation and see what they come up with. And they might surprise you. They might teach you something,
Yeah. Give them that freedom again.
right? Why do you think it's necessary to forgive people when they ask for forgiveness? And by the way, for instance, we don't even teach our children to apologize properly. When you teach a child to apologize, you don't say to them, go say you're sorry, because it's a word that's fairly meaningless to a young child, right?
yeah.
You say to the child, you need to go to Johnny and you need to say, I'm sorry for throwing sand at you. I know it hurts when it gets in your eyes, and I will promise not to do it again. Do you forgive me? Like, he needs the whole thing, then he can own it. Then that gives Johnny the idea that, oh, so the forgiveness is kind of conditional. because he asked for it and he meant what he said, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a truthful exchange that happens, and
Mhm.
both parties walk away wealthier.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I circle back around actually to something that you said when you were talking about writing the curriculum based on this idea of forgiveness? You mentioned that even before you were a believer, you were writing about forgiveness. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why that was even stirring in your heart?
I wish I knew. I wish I still had. I wrote like a full-on essay, and this was I mean, I suppose I was just sort of starting to become a writer, which, by the way, when I was in school, I hated writing. So imagine my surprise when I discovered that I enjoyed writing and reading.
There you go.
What?
Through my thought process and I researched a bit and stuff. I realized that there are three different types of forgiveness. There's forgiveness of the individual that sets you free from the anger, and that's the kind of forgiveness where you say, I recognize that individual as a creature, a created being of God who makes his own decisions, and I honor
Mm,
his ability to make decisions for himself, even though they're bad decisions for me, right? So I didn't come out well at the end of that. So, but I forgive him because he's his own person, and I need to forgive that. But I don't have to allow him back into my life to hurt me again. Then there's the second kind where he comes and he says, I'm sorry I hurt you, and he means it. And then it's up to me. Then I forgive him because you must forgive somebody who is repentant. You must. And then you say, okay, I will allow them back in, or I'll allow a little bit back in, whatever. But the third kind of forgiveness, and this was the one that I really got hung up on, is you have to forgive yourself because you have to concede that you put yourself in that situation, whatever it is.
mhm,
Yeah.
Whatever the situation was, the reason you were there is you, first and foremost. And then it's the other person. And I think that's the kind of forgiveness that we don't tend to deal with in our culture or our thinking, or even much in the church, is this idea of you have to find a place in your heart where you are willing to admit that you did something wrong for yourself and fix it. But when you fix it, you're free. So, yeah, so it's just something that I've thought a lot about. I've needed a lot of forgiveness. I've needed to offer a lot of forgiveness.
Who hasn't?
So I've got good practice. I've gotten really good at it. I've developed a great deal of patience. I've realized I'm an extraordinarily patient person, according to evidence or whatever.
sure. The witnesses.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I want to change gears a little bit. I know that this is a busy season of life for you right now with your movie coming out soon, and you just went to Paris with your daughter. What is this season? How do you rest in a season like this where you are promoting? Maybe you have other projects going on. How are you resting with your family right now?
Well, okay, right now I'm still in Paris, so I've got another week and a half of that. And what I've discovered is my new way of resting is reading actual books, not on a screen. So I just finished let's see, I just finished The Boleyn Inheritance, which is a historical fiction piece about Henry VIII, which I found fascinating. I read The Fires of Rome right before that, which was also a historical fiction. I happen to really enjoy historical fiction, so I'm always looking for more. So, and I find that it does a really good job of sort of taking me away briefly. It's a little escape, and then I come back. But I really enjoy what I do. I really enjoy it. I do find that the launching the movie is too much pressure. I really don't ever want to do this again, and I'm doing it for the second time. And I knew that I didn't want to do it, but I got suckered into it. Here I am. But the other stuff is all joy. I put it all down to joy, and then I spend a lot of time with my family. I encourage. Here's another thing. I encourage parents, seek out your children. Take the time to go into their bedrooms, during the day or at night, whenever, when they're available. Maybe they're, busy doing homework or whatever, but take the time to gently interrupt them and say, "What's going on?" And have a chat. You open that channel of communication, that is a building block. And the more building blocks you create, the bigger the building. And I think that, at least the way I grew up, it was sort of like, well, that just happens. That's just happens organically. You have a relationship and it just happens. But I tell you, that's not the truth. Relationships are engineered, they are designed, they are created. Just like, well, I have a relationship with God, but I never go to church and I never pray, but I know he's there. It's okay. We're good.
Boom.
No,
Yeah.
your relationship with God is built every time you go to church, every time you get on your knees to pray, every time you talk about God, every time you open your Bible, right? You have to build it and then it will come.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with children. It's the same thing. You have to show them that you value them. You have to pour out so that they feel like they're receiving, and then they will start to give back. And then the education doesn't matter anymore because what you've created is an adult who can educate him or herself. That's what you're going for.
Yeah.
That's the goal. Sam, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us, to tell us about your new movie. We're thankful that you made the movie, even though the
Yes.
process has been difficult. If people want to go and find it, where should they go? Where should they look?
Well, it's super easy. Sorbostudios.com. That's just my last name, sorbostudios.com. You can buy tickets. You can pay it forward and buy tickets for other people. You can even buy a whole theater if you want. What I'm encouraging people to do, because we are not mainstream media, we need all the help we can get. So I'm really asking people, power of 10, if you will tell 10 people about the movie and encourage them to go buy tickets or tell 10 other friends, I would be so appreciative because we have very little money to promote the movie. We don't have the money to buy all the advertising that the big studio pictures have. And then the other thing that I say, which is kind of fun because of the way that this event, it's a Fathom event. So it's only 2 days. It's October 29 and 30. And then if it does really well, it might stick around, but basically it's 2 days and it's gone. So go to the theater that's closest to you, buy your tickets, screen grab that, take a screenshot, and send that to your friends so they know if they go to that theater at that time, they can sit right next, they can see what seats you got. They can even sit next to you. When we did the Left Behind movie, I sold out 2 theaters that way. I got all my friends in 2 different towns because I was going to be in 2 different towns at that time. So the first town, all my friends in that town where I used to live, and then my new town where I live now. And it's a lot of fun. I just think it's a lot of fun and it helps me out. So do it.
So
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, the homeschool curriculum that goes with the movie, totally free. You can get that at sorbostudios.com. Download it. It does contain spoilers, so don't look at it before the movie. Watch the movie and then open it. But yeah, that's totally free.
Wow.
Perfect.
There are also, by the way, discussion guides. If you have a book group and you want the book group to go see the movie, there's a discussion guide for the book group too.
And they're different. Thank you for differentiating. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being on Blessings in Motherhood today. We appreciate your time and all your work.
Yes. Thanks, Sam.
I was blessed to be here. Thank you both.
Man, I really loved that conversation, especially how she ended it with just reminding us to take the time to go into our children's bedrooms and have those conversations with them, to not miss out on those. I know I'm in that stage of life right now where I just want to get all the snuggles I can because I know they're probably not going to last much longer.
Yeah, absolutely. She had tons of great advice to give. So if you guys enjoyed this conversation and are planning to go see the movie, please make sure to share this with a friend so that they can be in the know. And of course, always find us on social media at Blessings in Motherhood. Like, subscribe, and leave a review. That really helps other people to find the show. And we hope to see you soon.
Bye, guys.